figured he'd have some fun today with Gruden and talk to a coach who knows what he was going through for a long time there as far as deciding whether to come back or not. And obviously, great coaches, the debate today as well. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet. Maybe one day he'll get there. You can make an argument he should be in the place. And here's our good buddy Dick Vermeil, the wine man out there in California. Dick, long time no talk. Christopher Russo, how are you today, okay?
Doing fine. How are you?
Nice to talk, Dick. Good to have you aboard here. And you relate to Gruden pretty well, and I guess you encouraged him to take the plunge back in. Give me your thoughts on that for a sec. Go ahead.
Well, Chris, I've known him for a long time, okay? And I know the passion he has for the game, and I know what he was thinking in staying out for a while, but I really felt he belonged coaching because he loves the game and he has a lot to contribute to the game, and I felt he belongs coaching. I feel bad for the people he's replacing because they won 12 games the year before they got fired.
Good point.
And then they didn't have a good year this last year, and off they're gone. But I think it's a perfect fit for him, and I think it was time.
Yeah. Did you sense him wanting to come back in other years or only in this particular? Sounds like Mark Davis has been working on him for a while. What do you think triggered it this year compared to a couple of other opportunities he probably had?
Well, I know he's been approached. I've been approached to ask him and question him about it in the past. I knew he's thought about it, but he was always concerned about the new Players Association rules where they really control the amount of time you're on the field, the pads work, and the off-season work, and he didn't feel comfortable in that. In the old days, when he was a head coach, he could control how much work each person needed, each quarterback needed, how much time they needed, how much pad work they needed, and he felt that was a handicap. So I think that was sort of a detriment, but he gradually got over that. And here he is back in coaching. Yeah,
no question. I mean, that hasn't changed. I mean, everybody talks about the awkwardness of the NFL, Dick, in the first part of the year and the sort of the lack of Christmas. And everybody discusses it because there's no OTA scenarios. Will John be able to deal with the fact that it will take his team a little while to sort of get into the groove of the season? Because that first month is always choppy in the National Football League compared to, say, 15 years ago. How about that for a sec?
Well, I think John will do as good a job as can be done within the rules, okay? I don't think anyone will do it any better. Some people will do it as well because they've been doing it. He'll get a little extra mini-camp work because his new staff, they give you extra 3 days, I think it is by the rules.
Oh, they do?
So that'll
okay.
But, I think he's been out long enough. He's watched other people coach, good coaches, good teams, good quarterbacks, good coordinators. He'll put together a great staff, and I think he'll get up to full speed a little faster than the normal guy taking over a head coaching job.
All right, for a guy, let's leave you out of it for a second before we go to your career. A guy who's out for 9 years, Gruden's been out 9 years. In this day and age, how long does it take you to get up to speed, Dick?
Well, it took me a full year, I don't think it'll take John as long. He's younger. He's been a little closer to the game with all the TV work and the special shows on evaluation, the quarterback shows and all that kind of stuff. He's been a little bit closer to the NFL game. Remember my last 8 or 9 years in broadcasting, I was doing 95%, 90% college games. So I think he'll get up to speed faster. I think he's a better coach than I was coming back. And, he's younger, more talented. He's been in the game longer when it was more sophisticated than I was when I was a younger coach. So I think he has those advantages, and he's been to the Raiders before,
which helps. Why the Raiders this time, Dick? I mean, I'm sure he had other opportunities. Does he have silver and black in him? Why run back to Oakland instead of another ball club? I know the quarterback's good, so that helps. Let me hear your discussion as far as the Raiders are concerned. Go ahead.
I think respect for the Raider organization and its ownership today. He and Al had a run out, and a parting of the ways. I think with the new owner, the son running it, I think, he's always been close to John. He was close as a younger man. And I think, like you just said, I think he's been thinking about pursuing him for a long time.
Yeah.
And when you're offered a 10-year contract at that salary, it's hard to turn it down, even if you didn't want to coach.
Yeah. 10 years, $100 million, but it does put more pressure on him, Dick. And let's call, like we say, let's be fair now. Let's look at it from the other perspective. He is not. Now you could argue this, and you might disagree, but. He's a good coach, but I don't think anybody in follows football thinks he's a Hall of Fame coach, yet he got Hall of Fame money. So there's a lot of pressure to live up to that deal. This is not a guy who won 5 championships and then all of a sudden came back after a 4-year hiatus. This is not Lombardi. Yeah. This is not Lombardi going to the Redskins. I mean, this is a guy that really hasn't proven that he's a great coach. He's a good coach, not a great coach. Yeah. How about that pressure-wise with the Raiders?
Well, I appreciate where you're coming from. I say this: let's give him a chance to be a great coach. He built the Raiders to a Super Bowl team. Okay, the next year he was traded for draft choices and a lot of money to go to Tampa Bay, and his assistant took over the team and took him to the Super Bowl that he built. Then he beat a team that couldn't get to the Super Bowl. He took that team and beat his old team, so that puts him in a pretty good category. But he couldn't get him back there to that level. And that was a different ownership at that time, new ownership, new management in that. And it wasn't as easy for him to get that put together as Tony Dungy did, So I think we can give him the opportunity to work his way in to be considered a Hall of Fame coach. I think he will.
You do. I know you're high on him. Yeah. All right, how about you? How about you, Dick? I mean, you did a great job at UCLA. You took the Eagle job. By your own admission, you probably worked him a little too hard against the Raiders in that Super Bowl in 80, 81. Left in 82. You took a long hiatus. And I've read all the quotes. You think you made a mistake leaving at the time. You should have handled that burnout scenario a little better. Let's go. That's a long time ago, but I know it. Tell the audience why you left Philly there in the early 80s. Go ahead.
Well, Chris, what I did, I allowed a passion to become an obsession, and I just couldn't turn it off, and it was wearing me out, and I think it was my own insecurities, and I wasn't as good a football coach as I thought I should be. In that state of mind, that frame of mind, I felt I owed my ownership better performance. I felt I owed it to my players a better performance, and I didn't feel emotionally like I was as good as I should be, and that's the number one reason I left, and I just made some mistakes. I didn't listen to people. I didn't listen to Sid Gilman. I didn't listen to my coaching staff. I didn't listen to the owners. They said, you can't keep up doing what you're doing the way you're doing it. And I said, BS, I can do it. I was wrong. Then I got out. And Chris, in those days, I was making $75,000 a year working my ass off, 18, 20 hours a day. And I go to television. I made $150,000 the first year working 16 weekends.
Did you really?
Wow. I was stealing for a living, And then, I kept missing. I kept thinking I would go back, and I was afraid I'd find myself in the same hole I was in. I didn't trust myself, and I had opportunities to go, and I'm not bragging about it, but I had some great opportunities to go back. And finally, I said, I think at 61, if I don't go back now, I never will. And God bless Georgia Frontiere, John Shaw, and Jay Zygmunt, who came after me after other people turned it down. And they offered the job to 2 other people, and they turned it down.
I didn't know that. Who were the 2 other people, Dick?
Well, Bobby, what's his name, went to Detroit.
Bobby Ross.
Bobby Ross, and then the other kid went to San Diego Chargers in the last of the year. They came out of Houston as a coordinator. And they were both offered the job, and then he offered it to me, and I took it. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity. I left when I shouldn't have left. But, nothing like being able to go out of this league as a world champion.
Yeah, that's
how I felt. And I was, 64 years old, like that. And that's usually about the time people think about retiring. And I did, but thank heavens for Lamar Hunt and Carl Peterson. They came back and talked me into going back. And we got into the championship playoff game, but we couldn't win, We got beat by Indianapolis and Peyton Manning.
Right.
It's still the only playoff game ever played where neither team punted.
I remember the game in Kansas City. June Jones is the guy that Dick was referring to, ended up with San Diego, who got offered the Ram job before he did.
No, it wasn't June Jones. It was the coach that Buddy Ryan took a punch at. What was his name?
Kevin Gilbride. Kevin Gilbride.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, Dick, because you did it twice. You left the first time, and then you came back, and we've discussed this in the past. You could have won another Super Bowl with the Rams easy, and you'd be in the Hall of Fame today if you ever did. You actually could have won with the Chiefs, too, but you certainly could have won with the Rams, and you left, and you have said before that was for different reasons, but that also was a premature retirement, correct?
Correct. But we wouldn't have won any more games than Mike Martz won, in my opinion. It's easy to make those kind of statements, and I've heard that before. Mike Martz did a great job. He's a hell of a football coach. Okay, and he did a great job. He got beat in the Super Bowl. Interception for a touchdown, those kind of things, and he got beat by a quarterback that's going to go in the Hall of Fame, but no one knew about him at that time. And Belichick is tough to beat in those games.
Now, I think we know that. Yeah, I think better.
We know that.
We're going to get to the history of the coaches. Is Gruden concerned, Dick, since you know him well, and I'd be interested to hear this, is he concerned that in his 10-year contract, he's going to basically be coaching the Raiders in two cities?
I don't think he's concerned at all. He's, 54, 55 years old?
I think he's even younger than that. I think he's like 51 or 2. Go ahead.
He's younger than my two sons, for crying sake. So I think the only thing he's worried about is doing the best job he can do and get him back in the Super Bowl. I really, he loves what he's doing, and I know this for a fact that football is not a form of work for him. Okay. It's a fulfilling obligation and fun for him. He just loves it. And that's why he stayed up with the game so intensely since he's been out with the video studies and all that. I bet you $200 he's in looking at game tape right now with the Raiders.
Yeah, but he's got a little Vermeil in him with that workaholic scenario. He's going to be working there 18, 19 hours a day, and that's what got you in a little trouble. What have you suggested to him about that?
Well, first off, he's a little smarter than Vermeil, so it won't be as difficult, okay? But anyway, if you're real smart, you can make it easier.
Yeah, true.
No one ever accused me of being real bright.
It cuts the hours back. He can pick it up a little quicker. I get that. But still, he's going to go overboard now, and you don't want him to go too crazy. How about that for a sec?
He's more mature today than he was when he left. He's not a kid anymore. He just has young man's mannerisms. You can't help but get a kick out of him. He smile and wrinkle up his nose. Yeah, love your man statements. You can't help but like the guy. And I think the players and the quarterback will really relish having him as the boss. He's going to run his own offense and call his own plays.
Yeah, I get into that. Now, when you left the broadcasting to go back to the Rams, what were you getting? You got $150 to start. What were you getting paid when you left, like 9 years later, 10 years later?
I made $5 million in the 3 years that I coached the Rams.
$5 million in 3 years, and your last year broadcast with Brent with the college. You were great with it, with the college football. What would they pay you CBS at that time? They paid you probably about $800,000 a year, something like that.
No, I think it was about $400.
$400. So yeah, that's good money. Now, when you took the Chief job, did you make a lot of money there too, or not?
Yeah, more than I was worth.
But you did a good job. Which job? From what you learned, let's look at it this way. How did you apply your Eagle experience to the Ram experience, and how did you apply your Chief experience, your Chief experience from the Ram experience? What did you take from each spot, which you improved upon when you took the next job?
A good question, Chris. I think I was more mature. I was more self-confident. I was more aware. I had a lot of time to compare what other great coaches were doing, and I learned a lot from watching them in the broadcast world and on the field in the meeting rooms. And I found out some of the things I was doing was pretty good. I found out some of the things I was doing weren't good enough, and so I molded an attitude and I molded a philosophy and a leadership approach to a little bit different than I did it before. I knew I couldn't go back in and run my own offense and call my own plays. I was going to give people responsibilities to do that and make sure I provided them within an environment that's fun to work in and an environment that had good players in it, and only keep good character people in the program, both as coaches and players.
All right, that's the Ram job. What did you take to Kansas City from St. Louis?
Well, the Kansas City program was much further along, more mature, extremely well organized, and they'd been winning. Marty Schottenheimer and Carl Peterson did a beautiful job there. And so it wasn't a losing organization. It just took a little sink. And I got all the help I needed. I'm disappointed because I didn't get it done. We were a real good playoff team twice. The first time we got beat, when we won our division. In my last year, they won 10 games and didn't even get in the playoffs. And we were good enough to go pretty good into the playoffs that year because we were a little better on defense. But I didn't get it done, and I would have loved to have the ability or the opportunity to hand the Lamar Hunt Trophy to Lamar Hunt because he was a great human being.
Yeah, and his son, it doesn't fall far from the tree either. His son, Clark Hunt's a hell of a guy, too.
Doing a great job.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I'm going to look at your record in Kansas City. I think you're being too harsh on yourself. You got there that first year, 6-10, but in 2002, you got to 500. In 2003, you were 13-3, and you lost to the Indianapolis in the playoff game that you mentioned. In 2004, you were 7-9, but then in 2005, you bounced back again, 10-6. And that year you lost. Who did you lose to that year? You lost to.
You didn't get in the playoffs.
Oh, you didn't get in the playoffs. That's right. Yeah, didn't get in the playoffs.
Yeah. But we did. We beat, I think, 5 playoff teams in a row at the end of the season, including New England. We're a pretty good football team.
Yeah, pretty well.
I allowed our team to get beat by a losing team a couple times, and that what really kills you.
All right, now let's do a couple coaches here, and then we'll let you run. Dick Vermeil, great job on Gruden. Why have the Chiefs, since we start there, they haven't won a playoff game at home, as you know, you saw it, 93. They got a little out of sync in the second half. That they lost a terrible game to Tennessee. And Reed now, who everybody loves, including Gruden, who loves Reed. Reed now, he's the only coach in the history of the sport who's blown 2 18-point leads in a postseason with a lead at the half. And we all know he's a good coach. What would your suggestion be for him in a Kansas City franchise? Let me hear.
Keep getting better players. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep improving yourself first. Your coaching staff second, then your players third. And Andy is that way. He's not a big ego guy. He's a humble man. He's a great work ethic. He cares about his players and his organization. And I still believe he will win a Super Bowl before he retires. All he had to do, I think, in the third quarter, when the first time they got the ball, is convert that 3rd and 1. People are saying he didn't run the ball. He wasn't on the field in the third quarter at all.
Yeah, ran a crazy
third and 1.
Yep.
He got knocked for a loss on 3rd and 1.
Ran a crazy play. Ran that quarterback option, which I did not understand. But I do.
We all make those kind of mistakes.
Yeah, I love Dick. He's fun. Yeah, so you think eventually, you don't think they need a facelift. You think eventually you think that Andy Dick eventually will break through?
I do. I believe in it. I really mean that sincerely.
And you think he will get it done? All right, let's do a second on Saban. What's your take on him?
He's as good as they get.
I mean, you want to put him up there. You want to put him up there.
He has great command.
Right.
He's a fine leader.
Right.
I got to know him pretty well when he was coaching at Michigan State, spending time with him there and broadcasting and all that. I also spent a lot of time with him. I coached against him when he was at Miami, and I was at the Chiefs. And I think he's just a fine football coach. And any real good football coach is going to win big at Alabama. They're going to have good players. They aren't all going to win the national championships like he has. And, some people get real good players and win a lot of games, but they don't win national championships. He wins national championships, number one, because he has a great program and great players, but he's a great coach, too.
Yeah, listen, we were discussing it a little while ago, and, outside of Bear Bryant, and take your pick on the third, maybe Newt Rockne. You can go anywhere you want with that third coach in college football, but he's up there, top 3 in the history of the sport as a college football coach. You'd agree with that, correct? No question.
Absolutely no question. You'd have to say John McKay's up in there.
Yep.
Red Saunders is up in there. Jim Owens was that kind of coach, I think. There's a lot of guys that are extremely good, and most of the guys that are really great were in programs where you were always going to have real good players. How
does Nick stay motivated here with 6 championships at 66 years of age?
I think that his passion for the game and his compassion for his organization and players will never fade. That's him. That's what he does. That's what he is.
characterize him. I don't think he's a great play caller. Like a Walsh or somebody like who's going to trick you. Go ahead.
He doesn't call the play.
I know that. So I know he does the defense. So I mean, the passion, the commitment. What makes him so great? Go ahead.
Chris Belichick doesn't call the plays either. That doesn't make him any less the coach. He's still the leader of the organization, and he builds the environment and the system and the scheme and oversees everything. He's the driver of the bus. That's all there is to it. Now, put somebody else in that driver's seat, they may not have won that world championship. NCAA
I agree. No question about it. Now, why did it not transfer? Was it just because of the quarterback? Why no success with the Dolphins?
Takes a little longer. Didn't have the quarterback. Takes a little longer. It's tough. It is tough to win it all in the NFL.
You did it, Dick. You did it.
Good fortune.
You did it, Dick. You went from UCLA. You had success right away with the Eagles. How come he didn't?
Well, it took 5 years to get there. He didn't stay 5 years. If he stayed 5 years, he probably would have done it.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you put. Listen. I admire the guy. Anybody who wins that much, he gets the credit as far as I'm concerned. Now, how about? I would put Belichick and Lombardi top 3 all time in the NFL. You want to go Paul Brown? Where's Dick Vermeil going for that third one? Let me hear.
Well, you got to think of Tom Landry.
How about?
You've got to think about Tom Landry. Really. Of course, I'm dating myself, my vintage, but I coached against him for 7 years. And you've got to think about him. Yeah, he's just a great. Joe Gibbs. Hey, Bill Parcells was a hell of a football coach. Bill Parcells could take your team and beat his team with your team that you couldn't yourself beat his team with your team.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that about him. I've heard that. We always forget about Chuck Noll, Dick. How come?
Oh, we shouldn't. We should never forget about him. We should never forget about him. Not at all. Never. There's so many good ones. I sit there. I can't think of all the good ones I respect and admire so much.
You want to put Paul Brown in the top 3?
You'd have to put him in there because he was such an innovator. The people that taught other people to be good coaches, and how to coach and how to teach, how to organize, and they were foundation setters for the league.
If you had to pick one coach for your life to win a game in the NFL, would you take Lombardi or Belichick?
Well, because of modern age, I'd take Belichick. You got to forget Don Shula. Got to be included in that conversation.
Sure does. Yeah, he does. Now you were.
There's just so many good ones.
Now it's funny. You coached against Lombardi when you were with Allen, and you in L.A. and you coached against Belichick for real. Let me hear your thoughts on those two for a second. Go ahead.
Well, I was an assistant with the Rams, okay, and we beat the Washington Redskins in Washington when he was the head coach there. But I played a minor role in it. We've beaten Belichick. We've lost to him in overtime, and we've lost to him. So but it's never big. I never won. I won a game as a head coach. I never thought I was the guy that won the game. Okay, players win games, not coaches. You might screw it up from time to time as a coach, but you better have players that make those plays that win.
When you walked off the sideline in '69 and Lombardi's coaching the Redskins, were you like in awe or not?
I was in awe. I was in awe of a lot of great coaches. I was in awe of Tom Landry. I really was. I was George Allen. I was in awe, and I worked for George and remained good friends with George through his lifetime. Don Coryell, my God. Great football coach. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet. I don't understand why not. Okay, because he was an innovator. He helped elevate offensive football like Sid Gilman did. Sid's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Jimmy Johnson. My God, what Jimmy Johnson did at Dallas? That's hard to do.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he went to Miami, had trouble. You're right about Coryell. He didn't win a Super Bowl, Dick. You know how that works. You got to win the big one, and he didn't win one. That's the problem.
But it just shows you. This year, there is no NFL coach in the finals to go into the Hall of Fame. To me, that's embarrassing.
Let's go to. I see what you're saying. You're talking about the Hall of Fame vote. There's no NFL coach in there. Wow, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I hadn't thought of that. You're right. In the 46. Who do you like this weekend? Let me hear your thoughts quickly on the games. Go ahead.
Well, I think the Eagles will be very, very tough to beat at home.
Do you really? Do you really?
Yeah, I think Atlanta is capable of it. I think Atlanta is a better team than they're being given credit for. Atlanta's played 7 playoff team quarterbacks this year. They played 10 winning teams this year. That's it. That's tough. That makes it. You don't look at last year. Their schedule was in 2016 wasn't as tough. So you got it, but I still think it's going to be tough for a team to come in and beat Philadelphia in Philadelphia.
All right, how about this? How about Saints Vikings?
I would have to go with the Vikings. I don't think it's good. I think the Vikings are going to be the team that ends up in the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be very difficult to go in that dome and beat them. Very difficult. The defense, they got the young quarterback playing well. He's like Kurt Warner. Come out of nowhere and play like that. You got to credit the coaching staff and what they've done. They've really done a great job. And I don't think any team's going to beat Pittsburgh right now, and no team's going to go beat New England right now.
Yeah,
it'll come down between New England and Pittsburgh.
Let's do it. I agree. Let's start there for a second. I like the Tennessee karma. We all know about the Jacksonville defense. Which team has a better chance to be more competitive in the fourth quarter, Titans or Jaguars?
Boy, I don't. The Jaguars are doing it in spite of a playoff caliber quarterback, and that's tough when you get into the second level of the playoff games and that stuff. But he's had some big games. He's got to play better than he played last week. I'll tell you that.
No, played terribly. You don't like the Titans at all then against the Pats. What's your take about what would be your take on a rematch with Pittsburgh and New England?
I'd still have to go with New England because the game is going to be played in New England.
Yeah, I mean,
how many people can go up there and beat them in a playoff game? That's tough.
Not many.
It's tough, and Roethlisberger could do it. He's a man that could do it. They've done a great job with that coaching staff and that stuff. And one of my former assistants on that staff, and I know they coach. They coach a hell out of good players, and they represent Pittsburgh in the same style that the whole program represents over many, many years. So it'll be tough, but I can't see anybody beating New England.
You can't. And Gruden will have success. You're convinced he'll do a good job. You're okay with that?
I'll bet you a case of wine on it.
I'll see you at the Super Bowl for that case there, Dick. Great job. Thanks so much, pal. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Dick Vermeil, some thoughts. He gave you some good stuff. Dan Lang, Sports Bite, half past.